explain the importance of knowing or having an understanding of who God, the Most High, has called you and I to be, because it is what shapes our choices and it is what shapes our understanding of us and the people around us. Every choice we make every day contributes to who we think we are, and vice versa. Who we think we are contributes to the choices that we make. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, this is a podcast where we learn and grow in the grace of God. I am your host, Lynn Sarah, and I'm just a regular Christian girl learning as we go. This podcast serves as a testimony to the growth that God is doing in me and the work that He's doing in me, all on camera. So, anyways, let's get right into the video. Today's podcast episode is gonna be a Bible study, but also what God has revealed to me through this Bible study that I wanted to share with you guys. Today's topic is in the book of Daniel, chapter 1. So the first chapter tells the story of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. If you see me looking down, I have my notes and my Bible here. So these are some names like, I don't even know, you know? But if those names don't ring any bells, you may know them by Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yep, they're the same little boys who got thrown into the fiery furnace. So that is how the story ends, but how do we get there, right? So, boom, the story goes like this. Mind you, this is a Cliff Note version. Go read your word to find out every detail of what happens in the story. It gets crazy. Basically, Babylon, the king of Babylon at the time, Nebuchadnezzar, he attacks Jerusalem and takes them into exile. David and his boys are there too. Unfortunately for them, they not only get captured, but then they have to go and work for the king in the palace. The key verses that I want to keep in mind is Daniel 1 verse 3 to 4. It goes like this. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of Babylonians. So after they arrive to the palace, basically they get these meal plans, right? Because they're staying there now and they have to learn to read, talk, and eat like the Babylonians. And additionally, the king actually changes their names as well. Daniel gets changed to Belteshazzar. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Don't, you know what I mean? Don't do me. Hananiah gets changed to Shadrach. Mishael gets changed to Meshach, and Azariah gets changed to Abednego. I feel like Abednego is the one name I remember because what the hell? What was going on in Babylon? Who created that name? Abednego. Be so real. Abednego. Where is Abed going? Nowhere. Abednego. So I'm so ridiculous. The first question that comes to mind when I read this is like, okay, you stole them. Cool. They know they were stolen. They're like old enough to know what their names were before. Why did you change them? Like, what was the reason? They already know they're here. They already know they're working for you. Did you really have to do all that, right? The first thing that comes to mind is, or the question I want you guys to keep in mind is, how does our understanding of our true identity as given by God shape the choices we make and the paths we follow in our daily lives and understanding? So let's talk about what happens when they get these meal changes and these name changes and they're being taught how to do literature and all that. Daniel's basically like, no, I'm not going to eat the way you eat because I know how we ate back at home and I want to continue to eat the way I I was taught to, because he was part of the royal family. He has royal lineage, and he didn't want to abandon his customs and he didn't want to abandon his identity. So he strikes a deal with the king, and God puts compassion in the king's heart for Daniel. And the king actually, the deal goes through. The king actually agrees to let Daniel to eat the way he eats compared to how the Babylonians eat, and he didn't have to abandon his customs and his identity, right? Um, And I feel like that took a lot of wisdom and maturity for Daniel, because, like, your home is gone. Imagine, right? Somebody steals you, your homies, your family, everybody. Just picked you up from your home, moved you elsewhere, destroyed everything, right? They change your names. And they got you working in this palace where everything is seemingly provided for you. Everything seems good right now. And then you decide, you know what, this one thing is really gonna get me. I can't eat the way y'all eat. Mm-mm. Y'all like to eat, example, horses? Nah, I don't do horses, sorry. Y'all like to eat steak? Nah, I'm gonna stick with my fruit, sorry. So it's like, it makes you wonder, why did Daniel feel so strongly against this? And I think it has to do with identity, right? The enemy, in this case, King Nebuchadnezzar, is coming in to steal his identity. And he is not letting that happen. So, first, let's quickly define identity before we get into this deep topic. In case you can't tell where we're taking this, I want to use the story of Daniel in chapter 1 to explain the importance of knowing or having an understanding of who God, the Most High, has called you and I to be, because it is what shapes our choices, and it is what shapes our understanding of us and the people around us. Every choice we make every day contributes to who we think we are, and vice versa. Who we think we are contributes to the choices that we make. Identity is an individual's self perception, personality traits, values, and beliefs. So, back to the story. Daniel and his boys were Israelites. Their very names were meant to glorify God. And their daily lives, the way they ate, the way they dressed, were all meant to glorify God and set them and their people apart. So, in my notes, I decided to look up what their names meant, because I feel like that little detail of the king changing their names, he seemed pressed about it. It's almost as though he knew what their names meant and he wanted to change that, because he did not want them having a link to who they thought they were, to who God had called them to be. Let's start with Daniel, right? His name means God is my judge. It got changed to Belteshazzar. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it means favored by Bel. Um, honey, we don't serve Bel here. We serve God. Hananiah, which means God has favored, got changed to Shadrach, which means command of a coup. Then we have Mishael, which means who is like God. Again, glory to God. Got changed to Meshach, guest of a king. Not the guest. Then we had Azariah, helped by God, got changed to Abednego, servant of Nego. So it's like, how do we go from being helped by God, from God being our help, to Abednego, servant of Nego? Like, I don't know. This is important because this is one of the first things that the king does after seizing their land. He changes their names from glorifying God to glorifying him. That is so symbolic because it's literally taking the God out of them, which we know you can't do. So this is not going to end well for the king, but he don't know that yet, at least. Um, it's like, like the whole thing about like code switching. That's what just came to mind. Like when I go to work Not gonna lie. And like my lingo changes, some of the references I make change because I know that it's unprofessional to speak with like a certain lingo, even though it's not like anything with swears or derogatory. It's just a different type of English that's linked to a different part of our country's history. I know it's viewed as unprofessional. So I change it up. But what it does is it presents a different person to the people I work with. It presents a different person to the people, the customers that we help at work. So they will never get to perceive the me that I am at home. Their names got changed. And so it presents a different person to everyone around them because their names used to glorify God and now it glorifies somebody else. So, aside from identity, the second part of the story that sticks out to me is the choices that Daniel made. His identity was changed, his name was changed, his role was changed, the things he was meant to do were changed. And despite that, the choices that he made did not change, right? He told the king he would not eat the way they ate. And even towards the end of the story, in Daniel chapter 3, he refuses to do this one thing that get them thrown into the fiery furnace. So this shows a link between who you know you are and the choices that you make. There are some things that we do in life, it is because we have a false understanding of who we are. We can even go back to the first story of Adam and Eve when the serpent comes to them in the garden and he tells them, oh, like, if you want to be like God, you should eat of this fruit. Here he's telling them a lie about their identity because one of the very first things God says when creating humans is, let's make them in our image. Let's make them like God. Adam and Eve did not know a secret part of their identity. And it was not like it was actually secret, but there was one thing that they didn't know about their identity, which ultimately led to the fall of who they are. It led to the wrong choice being made. If they knew that they were made like God in the first place, they wouldn't have listened to the enemy when the enemy said that eating this fruit will get you to be like God, right? So the enemy is fighting for our identity. He's fighting. He doesn't care if you know who you are or not. He just needs you to believe what he says about you. He needs you to take in the information he's giving you. He needed Daniel to believe that God wasn't his judge, but instead he was favored by Bel. Mm-hmm. He needed to know, for Azaria to know that she's not helped by God. She's a servant of Abednego. That's who she is. He is, sorry. I don't know why I say she. That name, modern day, is more feminine than masculine, but Azaria, right? Needed him to know that he was a servant. So the king goes in search of a certain kind of person. Remember that verse I told you to keep in mind? We're going to go back to that now. Daniel 1, 3-4. The king ordered the chief of his court officials, Ashpenaz, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and nobility. Number one, he was looking for royalty. Okay? Number two, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was looking for people who were already qualified, people who already had a skill for learning, people who would be better equipped to pick up what he was putting down. What I'm trying to say is that the king, Nebuchadnezzar, was looking for people who already possessed the skill, favor, talent, and calling that God had already instilled in them. They were already people of the royal family. They were already noble men. They already had the skill to learn. He was looking for people who already possessed those things to fit the role that he wanted them to fit. What does that mean for us? The enemy targets you, he comes after you, he searches for you to be an agent for the devil, for himself, because of the very calling that God has over your life, because of the very talent that God has already put in you, because of the very skill that God has already equipped you with. See, the enemy cannot give anyone favor, talent, skill. He can't do any of that, but he seeks for people who God already has put these things in them, and he perverts their life into a way that can glorify him instead. Because it comes down to a choice. Who will we serve? God already gave us these things. He already put these things inside of us. He already put these skills inside of us. But will we use them to serve the Most High, or will we use them to serve the enemy? King Nebuchadnezzar knew this. He knew he couldn't form men. He couldn't form noble men. He couldn't form a man without any physical defect. He couldn't form a man who was well informed and quick to understand and qualified to serve in his own palace. He couldn't form a man that was qualified to serve in his own palace. Instead, he went and he stole one or four to do the role that he wanted them to be in. So, my question for you, my question for myself, right, is, do I know who I am? Do you know who you are called to be? Because that very understanding is what directs our choices. It's what we need to know to understand how to allot our time properly. And once we know this, we can take a look at our life and see in what ways will the enemy try to attack us, right? Because for the very aspect he is trying to attack us in, the very aspect he's trying to make us slave in, is the very thing God will use and he placed in us to work for his kingdom. So who are you? If you don't know, like most of us don't know, I would say the first step to identify who you are is to identify who you serve. God. Who is your master? Who is the one that you serve? What do you know about the one that you serve? Who is he? Right? That'll give you a perspective of who you are. If we know that God is king, read your word, don't take it from me. God is king. We have various examples, right, from the Bible of the kings that God has made and how it says he is the king of kings, right? If we know who he is, what does that make us? That makes us royalty. Through Christ, we are royalty. Meaning you can't be doing whatever. You can't be going wherever. You can't be acting the way you want to act. You know, sometimes we want to act like animals. We can't. We can't jump at every impulse that we have because we are royalty. And you don't see kings and queens everywhere doing whatever. No, they have rules. They have a way of life. They have a way they have to conduct themselves. And the Bible is clear on how we should conduct ourselves. And I'm not saying the moment you realize you're a king or a queen, the moment you realize you're royalty, that all of a sudden you're going to be behaving this way. We have lived our whole lives in sin before saved by God. It will take training. You wonder what the royal family, kings, queens, princesses, princes are doing when they're not outside on camera for us to see. They're being trained. They're in their books, their word, the Bible. They're being trained by God, by the Holy Spirit who is here to help us. They're being trained on how to act. They're acquiring skills. that's what we should be doing, right? And when they are interacting with others, the Bible tells us that we should be spreading love. That's what we should be doing. The second thing is we should know what our master, who the one that we serve, says about us. Because we serve a living God, and because he speaks to us, because he cares about us, he tells us exactly what we should be doing and who we are. And he says so many promises in the Bible concerning us. We need to read the passages that explain who we are called to be and how we are meant to be set apart. And we need to know what God declares over us. Because if we don't know it, that is when the enemy can come in and try to sell us something that is already ours, and try to lie, and try to give us a counterfeit. We should know our word. Third, what does God say you should do? We have many passages. One of the most obvious commandments that Jesus says, the most important one, is to love each other, to love God, to love ourselves. It's important that we follow these things, his commandments. One verse says, I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. It's another verse that says, it's not coming, it's like, those who love me keep my word. Yeah, they follow my word. And so if we are trying to follow the first commandment, which is to love God, then we do that by following our word, and we can only follow the word if we are in it. So that was what I got from reading Daniel chapter 1. I love when I read my word and God gives me these things, because it's like, damn, I thought this book was just about a fiery furnace and how God is in the fire with us. Yes, he is. But there's so much background to it. If Daniel was so quick to deny himself, God, his identity, could God have shown up for him in the same way? I don't know. But I'm going to end it with this, y'all. Get in your word, find out who you serve. Find out a little bit about the God that loves us and that we are learning to love every single day. And then learn what he says about you, because there are great promises declared over your life that are there, that are waiting to be activated. They're already yours. You just got to grab it. And then there are so many things that God has put in you, skills and talents that the enemy is vying after. He's vying for your creativity. He's vying for the way your mind thinks, the way you have a way with words, the way you have a way with music, the talent that you have with art. He's vying to steal that from you, because God already put that in you. But instead, if we remember who we are and who we serve, right, we will remember to use it to serve the Most High, to glorify God, instead of using it for the works of the enemy. That is all I had to share with you guys today. A short little Bible study on identity. Identity. And we are so young and we have so long to find out, but I hope this helped to lay the foundation to finding out who you are. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you drop a like and you press that little subscription button to see more of me just discovering the word and applying it to life, and to host more conversations like this. I hope to see you guys continuing this conversation in the comment section. And until further notice, I will see you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.